Hey everyone, Crow back again, and I've recently played all the games in the Sydney Hunter collection for the Evercade. What I'll do here is rank each game in the collection, starting with my least favorite, along with my brief thoughts on each game, and then rank the collection as a whole against all the previous Evercade collections. But first, let's briefly talk about the Sydney Hunter collection as a whole. There are 4 games included, all from Collector Vision, 3 of which star Sydney Hunter, who seems like an Indiana Jones character, except he's a geologist and not an archaeologist, and it seems he's out hunting for priceless gemstones and not ancient artifacts. The outlier game of the collection is Jester, as it really has nothing to do with Sydney Hunter, but I guess they just really wanted to include one more game in this collection. Interestingly enough, all the games included were designed for different platforms: the Intellivision, Sega Master System, NES, and SNES. The collection itself comes in a standard clamshell case with a full color manual, and as a bonus, there's a mini poster containing Sydney Hunter and the Caverns of Death on one side with a map on the other side. And before I start talking about ranking these games, I want to say that I played all of these games on the Evercade VS, all with the Mayflash F500 arcade stick. My least favorite of the 4 games is Sydney Hunter and the Shrines of Peril, and it's what I believe to be the very first of the Sydney Hunter games in the series. It was originally published in 2014 for the Intellivision. It's hard to look up any additional details on this game because it doesn't really seem to be listed in any game database, even ones that list other Sydney Hunter games like GameFAQs or Moby Games. It's very strange. Anyway, this is a simple side-scroller where you move from left to right from screen to screen, ducking and jumping over any obstacle in your way. At the end of the path, you'll find a giant diamond, and then you'll just keep doing that over and over again, only that the subsequent runs will get harder with a shorter time limit. The game really reminded me of that Smurfs game that was on the ColecoVision, right down to having 2 types of jumps. I mean, I thought the game was a fun score chaser, but you can have some goofy deaths. I mean, you walk into a wall, you die. Walk off a short step, you die. Don't land on a platform just right, you die. Regardless of all this though, I thought the game was okay. 6 out of 10. In third is the only game of the collection that is not a Sydney Hunter game. It's Jester, a maze action game that was developed in 2020 for the NES. This game is kind of like Pac-Man, but without the dots to eat. But several other things have been added in to make the game more complex. Okay, let's start from the beginning. Each level consists of 9 mazes arranged in a grid. Each maze has 4 skulls that move around randomly and will kill the Jester if they come into contact with him, unless the Jester picks up a sword, and then the skulls will turn white and the Jester can eliminate them. If the Jester eliminates all 4 skulls in a maze, a bonus item will appear for the Jester to collect. If the Jester collects all the bonus items in all 9 rooms, then he gets an extra life. But that's not really the point of the game. The point is to find the staircase and also collect the key that'll let you gain access to that staircase. But I don't think that key appears unless you collect all the items locked away in the center of all the other mazes. Each maze has a key laying around to collect, and once you pick it up, that'll unlock doors to one of the items in the center of one of the 9 mazes in the level. To further complicate things, the level is only lit temporarily, and if the light timer runs out, the entire maze goes dark. In order to keep the mazes lit, you have to keep collecting torches that can be found in each maze. And, to add on top of that, each level has a time limit that can be reset by collecting the items in the center of the mazes. It's an interesting game, and it looks simple at first, and then you realize there's 3 meters on the side of the screen, and then you're like, what the hell are all those for? And then you realize that those are the level timer, the sword timer, and the torch timer. So it's kind of weird because the game simultaneously seems to be simple, and yet overly complicated at the same time. I'll say the game's alright, but it's nothing I'll really go out of my way to play again. I was really struggling to score this one, but I'm going to go with a 6 out of 10, primarily because there's only 4 levels in this entire game. In In the second spot is Sydney Hunter and the Sacred Tribe, and is the second game in the Sydney Hunter series, and it was originally released in 2017 for multiple platforms, but the one included here for the Evercade is for the Sega Master System version. In this game, Sydney is kidnapped and trapped by a tribe, so he'll help them find a sacred doorway that will lead to an ancient Mayan city. So Sydney travels from screen to screen, exploring the caves and collecting mostly jewels. The game plays fine, though there's not really much in the way of surprises. Actually, though, you know what is surprising, though, is that you'll run into tribesmen while you're exploring, and from time to time they'll give you hints or jewels and such, but some won't let you pass unless you've collected enough jewels. I get that this is just a barrier to prevent you from just running through the whole game really quick, but story-wise it kinda makes no sense. These are the guys that brought Sydney here to find something that they couldn't. So why would they stop him from searching certain areas unless he's found enough jewels first? Well, I guess that's just video game logic for you. The Evercade itself advises that you pull out a pen and paper to map out the game as you explore. But trust me, you don't need to do that. The game isn't that complicated. Using save states, I beat the game in under an hour without a pen or paper or a photographic memory. This is a simple platformer, but unless you're terrible at platforming, the game will be over before you realize it. I'll give it a 7 out of 10. And my number one game in the Sydney Hunter collection is Sydney Hunter and the Caverns of Death, and it is the third game in the Sydney Hunter series. It was originally released in 2018 for the NES, and it was actually a Kickstarter-funded game spearheaded by Gamester81. There's supposed to be an NES version as well, but I believe that version is still being worked on by Electric Adventures, as he's occasionally posted updates about this project on his YouTube channel. The game is very similar to the last game, Sydney Hunter and the Sacred Tribe, except for a few things. The first is that the caves are now broken up into separate levels. The second is that you now have a torch that you can use to temporarily brighten dark caves. And the last thing is that you now finally have a weapon in the form of a boomerang, which automatically makes me like this game more than the rest. There's a bit of exploration to be had, though this game seems to be a bit more linear in nature due to the caves being broken up into levels. There's a lot of repetition throughout the game too, as you'll see the same layouts appear multiple times. The game seems a little bit glitchy at times as well, and I really don't know why water drops are an instant death. It seems kind of a weird thing to kill an adventurer. The thing I found most bizarre though was the option of the original or extra game mode. As far as I could tell, the extra game mode is just the same as the original game mode, just with 2 extra levels, which includes a few new enemies. Now, I didn't play all the levels in the extra game mode, just the first few, and then I used the same password I got from the original game mode to skip to level 10, so maybe there's something different in the levels I skipped, but as far as I could tell, the original game mode is just a waste of time, and the extra game mode should have been the only game mode. Regardless though, it was still a fun game, though far from perfect. I'll give it a 7 out of 10. And now I suppose I'll have to find a place to rank the Sydney Hunter collection against all the previous Evercade carts, and to be honest, I found the entire collection to be a bit underwhelming. I didn't think any of the games were bad, but the best score I could give was a 7, with the average of all 4 games being a 6.5. That sadly means I have to rank this collection pretty poorly. I'll have to give this one a D and place it under Atari Arcade one, since there were games in that collection I liked more than this one. And then I'll wrap it up for the Sydney Hunter collection. The next Evercade card I'll look at will be Pico Interactive Arcade 1. This is the collection that released the same day as Sydney Hunter collection. See you then!